Writers, agents, and publishers, all in one room. Now that's a recipe for success. And that's what's been happening at the International Writers Conference in Windsor. Hello, I'm Veronique Mandel. We're at the International Writers Conference in Windsor, and I'd like to introduce you to some of the people taking part in the conference. And we're going to start with probably the person who's the most important person in a writer's life, and that's a publisher. My first guest is Sam Hyatt, and Sam is the founder of the Rights Factory in Toronto. Sam, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, I know that you started in this business in one form or another at a very early age. Tell me how you got started.
I started a literary magazine when I was a kid, just out of school, and I met a lot of writers that way. We had a lot of parties. It was really just a lot of fun. I had no idea how to make money at it, and to continue along those lines, a lot of the writers said, you should publish my book. So then I started publishing books, and I did that for a while, and I finally figured out a way to put it all together by becoming an agent. So now my job is to find publishers for writers.
What sets your agency apart? You know, it's very difficult for writers, isn't it? But you do unique things.
I think we're very accessible compared to other agents. There's a lot of agents where you can send them emails and they never respond because they're busy. But we're busy too, but we want to be accessible. We want to reach out and find people. We're always excited about finding new voices and making a market for writers rather than being like, you know, lawyers or professionals who manage people's careers. We like that too, don't get me wrong, but there's a kind of thrill to finding somebody that's unknown and bringing them to, you know, a Penguin or Random House or a major publisher.
How difficult is it for writers to actually get published? You've had a long career looking at it.
Well, we're living in an interesting time. I think there's so many options now. So almost anybody who wants to get published can get published. It's just a question of where they are on the spectrum. I mean, ideally, they should, if they're writing for other people, not everybody is. There are a lot of brilliant poets out there who might really never, you know, become really famous, but they might be writing great poetry and they might be happy in doing that. But if you want to find a wide readership, I think it helps to have, you know, a kind of commercial sense in your storytelling. And if you can create characters and tell a story will draw an audience, then the smartest thing you can do is find somebody like me to bring that to New York or London or Toronto and then internationally and eventually to Hollywood, because believe it or not, writers make so much more money from the film and TV stuff, you know, but that's going ahead a long way. Ideally, you want somebody to first say, I really like your writing, I like your story, I like your character, we're going to do a book with you, and see what happens.
Should a writer set their sights on a small publisher, a large publisher? I mean, should you just assume that you're going to be a blockbusting success? I
think that's a dangerous thing to assume. I think you should start with, if you are writing a book that you think that big publishers would be interested in, I think what you want to do is find an agent or a publisher who has done those kinds of books. So you have to do your research. That's probably the toughest thing, because you can go online now, so it's a little bit easier, and there are lots of guides to agents and publishers. There are books you can get, but once you've found some people, then you have to send them a query letter, and see if they're interested. But if you're doing, you know, more experimental writing, or if you're not embracing a commercial form like a thriller or a memoir, you know, an established form, it might be better to start with a small press. And there's one of the great things about Canada is we have hundreds of small presses and literary magazines to build a literary community. They're all, thank God, sponsored by places like the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council. and various provincial arts councils. And so they're constantly looking to find Canadian talent and help the writers build a platform for their work.
How important is it for writers to come to conferences like this one?
Oh, the conferences are important because we all get to meet each other face to face. And even though we're living in an age where technology replaces a lot of that interaction, we're still the same creatures we were tens of thousands of years ago. And the idea of sitting with somebody and getting a sense of them from talking to them in face to face is very important to us. And it can make a huge difference in terms of creating a bond or a relationship. As I'm sure anybody who's tried to look at online profiles and then compares the date to what they thought it was going to be like. So we still need to meet.
And finally, what kind of talent have you seen at this conference?
There have been some very interesting memoirists. There's been at least a couple people doing some crime stuff that I might be interested in. I mean, I have a wide range. I've done children's books and thrillers and literary fiction and memoir. I like a lot of first-person stuff because I feel like if you're telling me a story, first person is I. So when you're saying, this is what I did, I find it a little more intimate and interesting rather than talking about third person, like those people. He did this, he did this. I'm like, who are they? Whereas you say, I did this, I'm like, you did. So I get more excited about it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all of this.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to move along so that we can meet some of the writers who are here. These, those authors, aspiring writers. And I'm going to ask one of the writers who came all the way from Brazil to join us now here on The Right Stuff.